There's a type of beef I'd never seen before moving to Los Angeles at 18. Not that type of beef.
The beef between Mexicans and Salvadorans.
I was bullied in school.
By Mexicans?
Yeah, they would get mad that I don't want to say I was Mexican.
Are you serious?
Like, you're Chicano, Holmes. I'm like, I'm not Chicano.
Yeah.
There's this unspoken but sometimes spoken tension between Salvadorans and Mexicans.
I remember a Salvadoran friend told me once very nonchalantly, "Oh yeah, Salvadorans and Mexicans don't get along here."
I will say that I think Mexicans are very prideful, and I think that it can come off as arrogant.
And it was a tension I never heard of growing up in Chicago. But in LA, a lot of people seem to be aware of it. Or at least here on the El Salvador corridor, LA's first officially recognized Salvadoran neighborhood, they're very aware of it.
¿Y usted escuchaba esta supuesta rivalidad entre los salvadoreños y los mexicanos?
Sí, mucho. Sí, sí escucho que dicen, ay, es que el mexicano es esto o el salvadoreño es esto.
What exactly is behind this supposed rivalry?
And why is it so pronounced in Los Angeles? I asked a sociologist who's researched this very topic to find out.
Oh, and how do young people who are both Salvadoran and Mexican feel about it?
You're both Mexican and Salvi?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Why do you say unfortunately?
My name is Fernando, and this story is about the hyphen between Salvadorans and Mexicans.
When I was in high school, there used to be a lot of fights just because there were different, Salvadorians. I swear.
That brown on brown crime.
I want to start this video by saying that there is no evidence there is an outright feud between all Salvadorans and all Mexicans. And the last thing I want to do is for this story to feel any idea of that. What I do want to explore in this video is where that idea originated and why I've heard that tension referenced both in real life and in general in content I see online.
Take this video from Alex A, for instance. She's a Salvadoran American woman in Northern California, married to a Mexican American man.
You don't gotta like Mexicans, because I do, and I don't play about my amigas y amigos, bitch.
I asked Alex what the inspiration for the video was.
When we first started dating, even growing up as I was dating, my mom was just always like, oh, don't bring home a Mexican, don't bring home a Mexican. It was mostly like joking, but I think there was some seriousness behind it.
Jose Salguero, who is married to a Mexican woman and posts about his mixed Mexican Salvadoran family on TikTok, also experienced this.
Mi mamá fue la que me dijo, ¿cómo te vas a casar con una persona que es de otro país?
I never understood why.
Dr. Steven Osuna probably understands the origin of it better than anyone else. He's an associate professor of sociology at California State University, Long Beach, and he looked into this supposed tension for a paper he published in 2015.
For me, always was puzzling because we all look the same. Our accent might sound different. The foods we eat might sound different. There might be some customs. But at the end of the day, the state, the migration enforcement, the type of work our families do, very similar, right?
And that's precisely what causes the tension between some Salvadorans and some Mexicans in LA specifically, Dr. Osuna found. See,
large Mexican communities have had a longer presence in Los Angeles than Salvadorans.
In part because modern-day Los Angeles used to be a part of Mexico.
Right, so there's long historical pattern of Mexican presence, but also Mexican migration to this area. And that's been happening since the late 1800s to the present.
Salvadorans didn't come to Los Angeles in large numbers until more recently.
Many start to arrive in the 80s because of the Civil War. Conflict in the country that's funded by the US creates a mass migration of people from El Salvador to different parts of the United States, San Francisco, Houston, DC, and Los Angeles.
And it's through this passage from El Salvador to the United States, through Mexico, that some people start experiencing this tension between Mexicans and Salvadorans.
A mí me tocó emigrar por medio de la línea fronteriza de San Diego y pues sí había mucha discriminación.
Cuando la gente se enteraba que era salvadoreño, o sea, ¿qué te decía?
No te ofrecía ni agua, la verdad. A mí me tocó feo. No hablo mal, pero pues es la realidad que me tocó a mí.
But there are also people who had positive experiences crossing through Mexico.
Yo recibí ayuda de un mexicano. Entonces, o sea, para mí yo nunca he sentido eso.
But the real tension crystallized when Salvadorans settled in Los Angeles. See, LA is the place with the largest populations of Salvadorans and Mexicans outside of El Salvador and Mexico, respectively.
So you have this mixture of Salvadorans, different groups that arrive, again, start to mix up, meet each other, and misunderstand each other or understand each other. And so these waves and patterns of migration start to accumulate in the city and start to make meaning of their community in this place.
And in that interaction, we start seeing competition for resources.
The interpersonal tensions that exist are exacerbated by larger structural forces. The issue of being in an area of the city of Los Angeles where resources are scarce, where public infrastructure is lacking, you might have an issue with public parking, and because there's an issue of public parking, you blame it on the ethnicity of the person rather than the issue of the city, right? This Salvadoran took my parking space. This Mexican took my parking space.
And this tension seeped into different parts of life.
There was never Salvadoran heritage nights at any sports team.
Yeah. From Mexico! Let's get 'em! You're not Mexican?
Hell no, I'm Salvadoran, baby!
Remember when I was a kid, like I didn't know. So like a lot of the Mexican kids, they were more aware. So I'll go and I'll think, you know, they'll be like, hey, where are you from? The Mexican kids used to tell me that.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, Salvadorian. Ah, your country is small. You guys are poor. Oh, this Salvadoreño. Nah.
There are also those who think the tension stems from the 1982 World Cup qualifiers, where El Salvador beat Mexico in a stunning upset, leaving the country out of the World Cup.
Eso quedó como histórico, que un país tan chiquito le ganara a un país tan grande, ¿verdad? Ese pase, ¿no?
Dr. Osuna says this tension was more pronounced in labor settings.
The structure of a labor relationship where you might have Mexicans that have been here longer that might be management, and you hire Salvadoran or Guatemalan workers, but management is Mexican. They don't own the business, but management is a Mexican. And so it turns into an issue of the Mexican manager versus the Salvadoran worker, rather than the issue of labor exploitation, labor precarity.
For his paper, Dr. Osuna interviewed young Salvadoran Mexicans, and one issue that kept coming up was something called homogenization. That concept is illustrated by this clip.
In the United States, the most common Latino identity is Mexican. So most people will see a Central American and just assume their identity. They'll speak Spanish and most people will respond with, oh, you're Mexican? And it feels very disheartening because that's not who they are and that's not their nationality, and it feels like they're being belittled.
That oftentimes erases who you are. It erases your background because that homogenous term lumps everyone, but more so it lumps everyone in this region as Mexican. Right? If you were in the East Coast, it would probably lump you as Dominican. If you were in Miami, it would lump you as Cuban.
I went to the El Salvador corridor in Los Angeles, a 14-block stretch of mostly Salvadoran-owned businesses, to see if this tension is still felt today, or if it's a relic of the past.
If you've made it this far into the video, I hope that means you find my reporting useful. If you want more of it, but not exactly in video form, you should consider signing up for my free newsletter. It's also called In The Hyphen and arrives in your inbox every 2 weeks. You'll get the latest on US Latino culture and trends. The link to sign up is in the description. All right, back to the video.
¿Y usted había escuchado esta supuesta rivalidad entre los mexicanos y los salvadoreños en Los Ángeles?
Sí, la he escuchado, pero no creo que sea cierto, la verdad. Yo trabajo con muchos mexicanos. La verdad que son muy derechos.
¿Y usted escuchaba esta supuesta rivalidad entre los salvadoreños y los mexicanos?
Sí, mucho.
¿Y qué se escucha o qué se escuchaba?
Que todos los mexicanos son malos, pero no todos son malos, sino que pues los que yo he conocido, algunos 2, 3 malos y la mayoría buenas gentes. Yo trabajé con gente mexicana y una señora era salvadoreña y la salvadoreña me traía así, y la mexicana no, muy buena onda conmigo.
Pues yo pienso que hoy en día mitad y mitad. Pues siempre ha existido la rivalidad, más que todo yo pienso por la educación que dan en las familias. Más que todo se tiene que ver en eso, la educación.
Jose Luis Dubon here is a Salvadoran who was married to a Mexican woman, Graciela. They were at the corridor eating with their daughter when I met them.
A veces sí escucho que dicen, ay, es que el mexicano es esto o el salvadoreño es esto, pero pues yo digo, está todo revuelto y hay de todo. Yo no generalizo por país ni nada.
¿Y por qué crees que de dónde nace esa idea de esa supuesta rivalidad?
Pues yo pienso que son complejos que tienen. Porque yo digo, no importa la nacionalidad, hay de todo en la viña del Señor, ¿me entiendes? Ajá.
Then there was Maggie, a Salvadoran woman whose partner is a Mexican man.
La verdad, son muy buenas personas. Para mí son muy buenas personas. Yo nunca había estado así, ¿verdad? Con un mexicano y la verdad me parecen muy excelentes personas.
¿Y te tocó un mexicano muy cocinador?
Sí, muy trabajador también. Sí, muy chambeador.
And it's this moment with Maggie that made me realize something. What's that saying? There's only one step from hate to love, or between hate and love. Which means, sure, for as much tension as there might be between some Salvadorans and some Mexicans, we've also seen a lot of love.
For his paper, Dr. Osuna interviewed Salvadoran Mexicans in California. What he found was that, one, it was really easy to find Salvadoran Mexicans in California, in part because a lot of Salvadorans and Mexicans had fallen in love and had kids. And two, that there was one specific place a lot of these love stories originated.
When I interview them, like, well, how did your parents meet? Well, they met at work, right? Or they met going to work. Okay? They met looking for work. These love stories of Central Americans and Mexicans is a labor issue. It's a labor story. It's a story of work, right? They worked in the same factory. They worked in the same restaurant. They were on the same bus going to work, right? It's a working class family construction that these families develop out of labor relations.
¿Le sorprende ese dato?
No. Es real.
So you guys have been asking for a story time of how Mr. and Mrs. Fresh met for the first time y...
Mija, aquí estamos en el mero lugar donde tu mamá conoció el amor de su vida hace 25 años. Pues resulta que yo no iba a venir a trabajar acá, yo trabajaba en otro lugar. Los cocineros que trabajaban aquí se enfermaron y me mandaron a mí de emergencia a cubrir. Cuando entré, la miré a tu mamá haciendo papas fritas, haciendo y comiendo, porque es lo que más...
Ya nos exhibiste.
Pero desde que la miré, yo dije, esa mujer es la mujer que yo busco. 30 minutos después, le dije que si quería ser mi novia.
In fact, Dr. Osuna's own parents met through work. He himself is Salvadoran Mexican American.
My dad was a worker. He's a plumber. He had to fix issues at my mom's house, and my mom called him, and he came, and there you go, and they met.
I was really intrigued by Dr. Osuna's experience as a Salvadoran Mexican American. I was curious how this tension was experienced by other people with ties to both countries.
My dad's Salvadoran, mom's Mexican. I had neighbors who were Salvadoran. And they'd always remind me that, right? They were like wanting to make sure that I was Salvadoran, you know, that despite the fact that I was growing up with a Mexican mom, you know, they would go to El Salvador and bring me a t-shirt that said El Salvador. I grew up around many Mexicans, families from Zacatecas. And, you know, they always were also bringing up the fact, oh, you're Mexican, you're Salvadoran. So there was always that like reminder from their aspect. It was a different reminder. It wasn't the reminder of my Salvadoran neighbors to be prideful that you're Salvadoran. It was more like, oh, you're different because you're Salvadoran. You're part Salvadoran. So there was always that distinction.
At the El Salvador corridor, I met Brandon and Mauren, two young Salvi Mexican Americans.
You're both Mexican and Salvi?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. I get it, yeah.
Why do you say unfortunately?
That's just a joke.
And in LA, when you meet friends, are they like, do they ever think you're just Mexican or just Salvadoran?
I usually don't admit the Salvadoran part, yeah.
Why?
It's just because you get trolled. Yeah, so I just avoid it. And I experience it every day, bro.
They like tease you and stuff?
Yeah.
What kind of stuff do they say?
I don't think I can say it. It's family friendly.
And had you heard about the supposed rivalry between Mexico?
I'm a victim of the war. No, I hear of it, yeah, but it's just troll. Like, I don't think anyone's ever serious.
Mauren, who is Graciela and Jose Luis's daughter from earlier, has had a similar experience with some differences.
Had you heard about the supposed rivalry between Mexican Salvadorans?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I lived through it growing up, and they would always tell me to choose a side, and I can't. So I was always stuck in the middle, but I was like, I used to watch Hannah Montana growing up, so I'm like, I get the best of both worlds, you know?
Growing up, when you told people like, oh, I'm Mexi Salvi, your friends, how would they react?
They were like, well, what do you like being more? Do you like being Mexican or do you like being Salvadorian? They would be like, kind of choose one over the other, and I'll be like, I can't. I see both at home, and I like both of them like the same.
Then there's Jose Salguero's daughter, Diana.
They're both different, you know, different cultures, different food, different everything. And just like having them clash together is just amazing. Like, you know, parties or something is always fun because we get los tamales, pupusas, you know, panes con pollo.
What I noticed in my interviews with young Salvadoran Mexicans is that they generally characterize the rivalry as somewhat of a joke, and that got me curious about this new generation's impact on this supposed rivalry.
I asked Dr. Osuna if he thought this tension could disappear as first, second, third generation Salvadoran Americans and Mexican Americans attain higher income levels and presumably equal positions of power.
The more and more Central Americans, Mexicans become middle strata or even upper class, their interests are not going to align with migrant workers, right? Unless they're conscientious of it. But most of them will probably vote for their own interests or start voting their interests. And that's why we have a rise of people supporting, for example, Trump, right? Where they're like, my interests align with tax breaks. I don't care about detention or deportation. Actually get rid of them. I don't align myself with those folks. I don't see myself like those folks. I might look like them, but I'm not them. But it's the class basis that we should be looking at.
But Dr. Osuna made an interesting point. For as much tension as there is between some Salvadorans and some Mexicans, there's also a lot of solidarity.
You're going to see Salvadorans and Mexicans in all these movements working together to support their communities, right? This is not going to divide them in a situation where like, well, you're Salvadoran, I can't work with you to defend my community.
Cuando yo escucho hasta el himno de México, hasta yo lo siento, personalmente, yo siento un amor ya por México, y no porque mi esposa me esté mirando, pero...
Sentía una sombra y dije, alguien está allí.
Pero sí, no, para mí...
Con el garrote.
Now I'm curious, is there Salvadoran Mexican beef where you live, or is this just an LA or California thing? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. By the way, if you liked it, you might also enjoy this other video I made.